Hello, everyone. My name is Annie Mayburn Noonan, and I'm the senior writer at DiversityQ, Bonhill Group's diversity and inclusion publication. For those of you who don't know, today is the International Day of Women and Girls in Science. And we're going to mark that occasion today by speaking to a very inspirational young woman, Alyssa Carson, who's forging her own path in the STEM world. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and maths. Alyssa is a student at the Florida Institute of Technology, where she's studying for a Bachelor of Science degree in astrobiology. She is also an international relations, global space strategic partnership STEM intern at Jacobs Engineering Group Incorporation, and a self-described astronaut in training. So Alyssa, thank you so much for joining me today for this conversation. My first question for you is, what is your ultimate career goal and why?
Yeah, my ultimate career goal is really working somewhere within the astrobiology realm. Astrobiology is really just how all of the sciences apply to space. So it has basically been a long-winded way of me figuring out what I want to do, just because I really could do almost any kind of research. So I'm definitely leaning towards like microbiology, bacteria in space, eventually searching for life, leading down that trail has my biggest interest. So working in that, as well as applying to the astronaut selection process one day and seeing if all that works out with the potential of being an astronaut. But really why? Just because I have always been interested in space and wanting to work somewhere within the space realm. And I definitely think I have found like my place within space, within astrobiology. So that's been really, really fun to kind of discover and figure out. And if I'm able to do astrobiology research from space, I mean, why not? That sounds absolutely fun. So that would obviously be the ultimate goal.
That's great. That's so inspirational. So was there a point back when you were at school, or I suppose for you to be high school, when you felt there was a gender divide around uptake of science subjects? Was that something that was going on at your school?
I guess slightly, definitely like in my younger years, like middle and high school, there was a little bit of a divide. There was still a good bit of girls that had like an interest in science. But for the most part, they were taking the classes, but they weren't necessarily in looking to pursue like a STEM degree. And I definitely don't think there's a whole lot of people I graduated with who have like remained within the STEM realm. So definitely there's a little bit of lack there, and I've especially seen it since going to university actually. So at my college we are primarily a STEM and like space themed school. Our most popular major is aerospace engineering. So we have a lot of STEM minded people here, and it is very male dominated. I think my campus is like 70% male. And it took me a good while to find one other girl in astrobiology. I now have a few, so I have found them. They are hard, but I have found some other females in astrobiology. But yeah, that's definitely where I've seen like the biggest, I guess, gap between girls and guys.
No, it's good you have your female allies. That's really important. So do you think there should be more onus on teachers within high schools, within schools globally, to support young girls in their kind of STEM journey? Do you think that intervention earlier on can make a difference when it comes to furthering, increasing female applications to universities to study STEM?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that is really going to go into it in terms of getting more girls interested. I think one, it's just kind of in general, girls having the opportunity to see if it's what they like. And I think that that's something that's really important. And that could be from a school setting, and it could not. A good example that I like to give is, let's say a little girl is riding her bike and her bike breaks. Like, how do you go about that situation? Do you teach her how to fix it? Do you fix it for her? Do you show her brother how to fix it, but not her? Something as little as that could actually make a big difference. She could absolutely hate it and never want to be involved in fixing bikes ever again. But also at the same time, she could actually actually have a really big interest in the way things work and mechanics, and maybe, want to pursue that a little more. And so I think it's all those like little opportunities that we have to really just show girls like, hey, like, are you interested in this? And just really like see the potential there, because it's important that girls are really just going after whatever their dreams may be. But we want to make sure that if it is STEM, then they're being nurtured to continue into it. I think also at the same time, definitely in more of like a school setting, I think that when we're younger, we get told like a lot of the same like traditional jobs. I remember when I was younger, I remember hearing like doctor, teacher, lawyer. That's about it. Like there really wasn't a whole lot of conversation about a lot of like non-traditional jobs. And so that's something that I love talking to kids about when I'm able to, mainly just because there is so much opportunity out there beyond a lot of the non-traditional jobs that we talk about. And so another huge thing is being able to mix interests. If you like space, but also like fashion, you can design spacesuits. Or if you like food, but also like STEM, we have to figure out how we send food to space and how, it needs to be packaged and things along those lines. So definitely if you're interested in multiple things, I think it's important to kind of like mix them so you're truly passionate about what you're doing. So I think in kind of those school settings, we can kind of maybe, explore different jobs, especially how rapidly the world is changing. There's so many new jobs that these kids are going to be able to go into that we don't even know about yet. So they definitely have so much potential.
And that's a really good point you just made, that the STEM world is so diverse and it can potentially incorporate so many different roles, as you just mentioned, sending food to space. Perhaps there's a girl out there who wants to work on fashion, designing the astronaut costumes, as you said. So it's not this kind of narrow path that some people may mistake it to be. So that's a good point, definitely. I also want to touch on a point about mentorship and what role you think it could play in furthering female participation in STEM. For example, did you have a mentor earlier on in your journey?
Yeah, so growing up, I had a little bit of exposure to, like when I went to space camp, there'd possibly be like a female astronaut here and there. So, I had like folks that I talked to, not like a full on, I guess, mentor all the time kind of thing, but I spoke to like people here and there that kind of like gave me a little bit of a boost. And then I also kind of had my dad, who was just kind of like big supporter, just like, you can do it. And that was really helpful as well. But no, definitely mentorship or really any kind of support, I think, is so important when you're trying to go after whatever your goals may be. And it's just so important because it really can be anyone. It could be a friend, it could be your parents, it could be a teacher. And I really think of it as, someone that at the bare minimum is just supporting you and telling you can do it. Obviously, someone could do much more than that and help you look for opportunities and help you do a lot more. But at the very least, just having someone help support you is like really amazing. And I do think that it is really, really nice to be able to have some sort of mentor along the way. And, I've enjoyed even just, freshmen I meet who are in astrobiology, giving them the rundown on, what to expect out of the major and how to go about it, and any tips that I've learned, always hearing from someone who's gone through those experiences will be helpful.
And well, I've heard this. I've heard you hear about kind of rumors or what I'd call myths in the STEM industry. There are some realities there too, aka being male dominated, but do you think there's some myths around maybe workplace culture that could be putting some women off STEM careers?
Yeah, I do think that in general with STEM careers can kind of be, it's not misleading, but a bit like confusing in, I guess, the description or like what we picture them as. I think a really good example of that is, for example, astrophysics. When I was younger, I was intrigued by astrophysics. I liked space, but I knew I didn't want to do engineering. So I thought that just kind of left me with astrophysics. And although astrophysics sounds really amazing and exciting and very physics, in reality, most of the work that you're going to be doing eventually in the workplace is just looking at data data on a computer. Although you're, looking at data, let's say from Jupiter, you aren't like at Jupiter looking at it. And so like, that's something that like I had to discover within school. Like I enjoyed more at least having something physical in front of me. Like I had to have something happening. Like that's what interests me. And so that's kind of what led me more towards like bacteria and biology, because I could at least have something and then apply it to space. And so I think in general, it's just continuing to have, even some of the amazing women who are working right now in astrophysics or in different areas of STEM to really share exactly what they do. And so teaching that to, I think, the next generation is what's going to be really important, because there's things like, let's say that there may be some confusion, but there's other careers that maybe are more exciting than they initially sound. And so I think it kind of goes both ways, to where if we continue to have these amazing people share their experience and what they do in their job, then, we'll all kind of get a better idea of what it is, because STEM can definitely get complicated a lot of the time. And so it's important to kind of have the direct workplace experience kind of shared.
So would you suggest that girls perhaps reach out to professors in a certain discipline within STEM that they're interested in, to really get that transparency of what a particular role is about?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely say it's like a recommendation, either to reach out, or even, I think just browsing through social media a lot of the time. There's a lot of really amazing women who are also science communicators and love to share what they do. And they're all very reputable, they're definitely scientists. And so I think, sometimes they share some of the work that they do. So even looking into that. Another really easy way is if you're like looking at a certain like major job or something, you can actually usually go in and see like what exactly the research is under that. So that can kind of give you a better idea of like, let's say, in space, there's planetary science and astrophysics and astrobiology, what's the difference between all of them? You can really kind of go in and see what the research is that they do. So, astrobiology, one sector of it may be more biology, and then the rest may be like exoplanets and deep space. And so you can kind of see the differences mainly through research.
And studying in your course right now, as a woman and you're in that environment, would you say it's a more kind of equitable and open environment to women than perhaps you thought, or from things you'd heard before?
I think that definitely it has opened. I think that there has been improvements in terms of women in STEM. I think that it's been a conversation for a while that we've been trying to, encourage more girls to go into STEM. So I do think that it has improved. Obviously, like I've mentioned, there still are more guys than girls, like in my different classes and at my university in general. But I do think that it is an improvement from what has been previously seen. And I do think that there is different opportunities that can help get the women to that place. I just think it's, important that we continue to encourage the next generation to do the same, because if there are these improvements happening, we've seen now, like, for example, in the astronaut selection process, it's typically half male, half female. However, it takes tens of thousands of people to send one astronaut into space. And so we want more women across all of those jobs, every different department in the space field. And so I think that's really the progression that we're getting to. So we're making progress, just not quite there yet.
And do you feel welcomed by your male colleagues, your male peers on your course? Like, does it feel like a kind of welcoming environment that you're all just students regardless of your gender?
Yeah, I think so. I think especially kind of the environment specifically that I'm in at my university, especially within astrobiology, it is a very small major compared to a lot of other things. There may be like different experiences in like larger majors like aerospace engineering. But I know that for me within astrobiology, it has been very welcoming because there are so few students really taking it that like when you find other students within astrobiology, we all just kind of want to cling together and like go along with each other. And so I think in that way, that's been really helpful because, we're all just trying to help support each other within the major, since it's so unique and there aren't many of us. And so I think that, within my major, it has been really welcoming.
That's great. And I want to move the conversation on to maximising your chances of a future STEM career. So, for example, what you're doing now. So you're studying, but you're undertaking internships and that sort of thing. So what would you say to girls who are still at school for what they could do to prepare to really get their CV in the best shape possible? Should they be looking at internships before even attending university?
Well, I think a big thing is, especially when you are in middle high school, those years, you definitely don't have to wait till you're going to college to figure out what you want to do. I think that's kind of like a really big kind of like misconception, is like you don't have to wait to decide till then. Of course, if you don't have it figured out, that's perfectly fine, and you will have like many more years to figure it out. But if you have an idea of something that you want to do, I think it's so important to pursue it and see like, oh, is this actually something I really enjoy? And that can kind of give you a better idea and experience if it is something that you stick with. So let's say, you have an idea like, oh, maybe I'm interested in robotics one day, doing like a local robotics club competition. You can kind of get an idea like, okay, do I actually like robotics? What aspects did I like, did I not like, and how can I, move forward and maybe figure out something else or along those lines. And so definitely starting out in those younger years and just different opportunities, different little things. They don't have to be big. They can be totally local and very small, but those I think can start you out by getting good idea and little experiences to start adding to a resume. And I think that all is a really good start. And definitely just be open to listening to any and every opportunity, especially like if you're going to, these experiences or competitions, whatever they may be. But, be open and talk about what you're interested in doing. It could be you go to a robotics competition and you say, hey, this is really cool, but one day, maybe I want to do like space robotics, and someone may know someone and kind of give you some more guidance on that. And so I think it's kind of communicating what you want to do, because you never really know where those opportunities are going to lead. So be open and be open to sharing what you're interested in. I know when I was younger, I was always saying, want to be an astronaut. I like space. I was always kind of talking about it to people. I eventually got better at it. I was very shy at first, but I slowly got a little bit more comfortable talking about space. But yeah, I think a big thing is just really talking about your goals, looking for those opportunities, and then, continuing to figure out what you want to do. It's kind of always going to change. And definitely little internships, and if you are looking for those, are really, they can be so versatile. You can, let's say if your interest is in space, you can even do like a little summer internship, or maybe not even an internship, but just volunteer at like a national park where you can actually like see stars and, be out there. There's obviously so many amazing companies and like big corporations that you could internship at. But even if you don't feel like you're at that level to be going to those big companies, there are still opportunities, even if they are smaller and local, they're great experience.
That's such a good point. So it's trial and error, isn't it? If you don't take these opportunities or search them, you're not going to know where your interests lie. So I think that's a great point. I now want to move on to quite a broad question, actually. Generally, so you've done, just from looking at your LinkedIn, you've done so much. You've had so much experience already for someone so young. I would love to know what your biggest challenge has been in your STEM career journey so far and how you managed to get over that challenge.
Yeah, so a big challenge I think that I faced was really trying to do a lot of different things when I was younger. So I definitely had to kind of prove myself in a lot of different ways, mainly based on my age. So I was trying to be involved in research and be involved in all these different things with people that were much older than I was. And so I was trying to always prove that someone younger could contribute to science research just as much as an adult would. And so that was kind of always something that I was struggling against. And that also came with challenges. So for example, when I was 15, I joined Project Possum, and they are a citizen science research organization. So it's basically everyday people who come together and we do really cool science stuff, and it's a whole lot of fun. But that also came with taking classes with them, which were graduate level courses. And so I was very much behind compared to everyone else who was in the program. So I remember I took, I think, one of the first courses with them when I was in high school. And it's, obviously like a graduate level course. So the person who was teaching it was like, oh, let's go back to some high school calculus. And I was like, I haven't taken calculus yet. I haven't gotten there yet in high school. So there were definitely a few just like educational challenges. And so it was really just overcoming them by knowing when to ask for help and knowing that there was going to be support. And I think that's a really big thing, especially with STEM in general. There are going to be 10 million questions. You're always going to have questions within STEM. And so I think it's so important that we encourage, always asking. And so that kind of helped me get over that. And it was always really just keeping up almost in a way. So I still, feel that way sometimes, still feel like I'm like running to keep up, even with like some of the like newer stuff I'm in. This semester I picked up a research lab, and there's obviously people who have been in this lab for like semesters, and so I'm again like running to catch up and feel like I'm doing just as much work as other people in the lab. And so I think in STEM that is kind of felt a lot, and there's always going to be someone that knows something you don't, and so it's always important to remember this is your specialty, this is what you're working on, and so that's really what you should be focused on. You don't have to know everything.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think whatever discipline you're going towards in your career, you're always learning, or you always should be learning anyway. So now I'd really like to hear a bit more about the internship that you're currently undertaking, which is at Jacobs Engineering Group Incorporation. Firstly, I'd like to know more about, so what is the organisation, what does it do, and what's been your main highlight there so far?
Yeah, so Jacobs in general as a company is one of NASA's largest contractors. So they do a whole lot of different things. They are super involved, like the engineering side. They just take part in a lot of the testings. Just a huge partner to NASA in general. So the team that I specifically work on mainly does international space relations. So we are mainly more focused on what other companies, agencies, countries are up to within space, and seeing if there's any connection to foster like Jacobs resources with what they're doing. And so that has been a lot of fun. So, one day I'll be like, oh, Alyssa, see what Poland's up to in space. And I'm like, I have no idea. Let me, go figure that out. And so it's kind of been fun because I've been able to learn about different space agencies that I hadn't gotten any exposure to. Obviously, when we talk about space, we mainly focus on like NASA, ESA, Russia, China, a lot of kind of like the big players, but there are a lot of countries that have some kind of involvement, even if it's just satellites or, something minor, they're still having some involvement in space. And so it's been really cool to see kind of more globally how the world is involved in space at the moment. And so that's been a lot of what I've been working on, and especially with the Artemis 1 test launch coming up in the next few months. So it'll be the first ever test launch of the SLS rocket in March or April is what they're shooting for. So that has been a huge excitement around the company lately, just because Jacobs had a huge part in some of the testings and components that went into the rocket. So we're all really just getting eager for that.
Yeah, that sounds like such an interesting internship. I mean, to have that global outlook in your role sounds fantastic. So I hear that you are going to undertake a master's next year, I believe, at International Space University. I'd love it if you could tell me more about the university itself and what you're going to study there.
Yeah, so definitely master's is on the radar, especially if I want to apply to the astronaut selection process. I do have to have a master's. So International Space University is definitely kind of like my top contender at the moment, just because so they're based at Strasbourg, France, but it's people from really all over the world coming, and typically it's I think typically they do around like 40 to 60 students at a time. It's like a very small, intense thing, but you're basically working directly with like what's happening in space now. And so that's kind of really exciting. So although like my master's won't be directly in astrobiology, it's going to be more in like a general like space studies. It's going to be working a lot with like what's happening in space right now, which I think is going to be really exciting. And kind of the way their curriculum goes, they have like a few electives, one of which is astrobiology. So I will still get my little taste of astrobiology, even though I'm studying it. But it kind of is my best option just because astrobiology is hard to find as a master's, as I've discovered. It's not the easiest or most common at most universities. So I sat in on a few classes with ISU a few years ago when they happened to be in the US. And it's overall a pretty great program in my opinion. So hopefully that all works out. And if that all works out, I get to spend a few months in France, which, wouldn't be too bad.
That sounds fantastic. And maybe this is too soon to ask you, but do you have an idea of the next steps following the master's program?
Yeah, so after the master's program, I think I'll probably want a small break from school. I probably won't go directly into PhD. I think I'm gonna try to go into working at that point. So some kind of job somewhere, we'll see, but probably working somewhere in the realm of astrobiology. It'll probably be some sort of like research would be my assumption. And then while I'm working, I would probably be simultaneously applying to the selection process just whenever the next one comes about. Seeing how that works out. Most astronauts apply a good few times before they're selected, so I kind of just anticipate applying and just continuing to build the resume for the next time I get to apply, and things will go from there, I guess.
Well, it sounds like you're on the most incredible and interesting career journey, so I really wish you the best, Alyssa, with all that. Thank you so much for talking with me, and I'm sure everyone who watches this interview is going to be as inspired as I have been listening to you. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.